Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
History Makers with Matt Prater.
Coming off of drugs, you're going to have emotional problems, but I kept chasing after God.
And he's using this vehicle to bring people out of that dark into the light.
And I went forward and I knelt at the front, and it was a radical conversion experience.
And that's where the big change happened, and that's where we decided we're going to use our music for God, we're going to change our songs.
When I was about 25-year-old, I was busted and into jail, and it was there that I came to the Lord.
History Makers with Matt Prater.
Hi, and welcome to History Makers. I'm Matt Prater. Today we're chatting with Kimberly Linco from Open Doors Australia, and we're going to find out a bit of her ministry, what she does with Open Doors. But let's find out a bit of your story, Kimberly. Welcome along. Tell us where were you born and raised?
Hi. So I was born in Sydney, in the Hills district in Sydney, and I've been part of a church family for basically my whole life. Two different churches now. So yeah,
Very cool. And tell us a bit about your upbringing. Were your parents religious as well, or was it just you stumbled into it? How'd you get into your faith journey?
So I was born the youngest of 5 children. So lots of people around me all the time. Quite a big age difference between me and my older siblings, and so I've always had this kind of older influence in my life. But my parents and all my siblings grew up in the church, and so very blessed to have that Christian foundation from a very young age. And so we went to a local church in Castle Hill that I was born into, and grew up. Went to a Christian school as well, so very very Christian influence, which was always a blessing.
And tell us a bit about your teenage years. Did you do the prodigal son thing and stray away, or were you always on the straight and narrow?
No, I was actually, so I was at school, and, it could have gone either way. But I think what the pivotal moment for me is, I think when you get to around 15, you're kind of figuring out okay, getting a bit older, a bit more mature, maybe some more than others. But we were at school, and they offer mission trips to the, I guess once you're 15 and older, I'd say. And we went on a trip to Central Australia. So we went to Northern Territory, and we went for a 2-week trip around the outback there, and just serving in the local Aboriginal communities. We had like a partnership with this school and this community, which was pretty amazing. But I think that trip was pretty pivotal in forming my faith, just in the way that we were focusing. It was, as much as it was like a community service kind of trip, it was very much like a faith building trip, which I think was great for a school to do that, particularly in those formative years of 15. You can kind of you can stray away, or you can get stronger in your faith. It's kind of easy to be swayed at that age. But that was something that really strengthened my faith, and it was kind of, I'd say that's probably when I decided for myself that I was going to be a Christian, was at that age. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And tell us a bit about after school. What did you do? Did you study or get straight into work?
Yeah, so I went to Western Sydney University. I did a Bachelor of Communications, and really loved it. I think it was much better for me to be at university than school. I think the way that I was tested was very at school it's mostly like exams and that kind of thing. But when I was at uni, it was a bit more a different way of testing my skills. So I think I did a lot better in uni, and then out of uni, got a full-time job in a social research company called McCrindle, which was fantastic. Really, really good. But it was kind of kind of the humble beginnings, I'd say.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's great to hear of the connection with Mark McCrindle. I mean, he's been really well known in Australia with his social research and having a Christian faith as well. It's been great to see his research, particularly on Christian trends and church trends in our nation. He's a great bloke. So that would have been a great season for you. How did you end up working for Open Doors?
Yeah, so I was at McCrindle and Mark McCrindle, he's absolutely incredible boss. I anyone who's come into contact with him would probably assume the same thing. And so it was actually really, it was really hard to leave that job. It was a fantastic job, but I was at church one day and we had a speaker from Open Doors come, who's now my colleague, and that was Beth Westwood, and she's amazing. And she was speaking on the persecuted church, and it was something that really tugged at my heartstrings, as I would imagine it would with a lot of other people who hear about Open Doors. But I think growing up, my parents had very much a missional focus. They always, my parents moved around all over Australia, and particularly when I graduated from school, they moved to East Timor for a year, and then they moved to Arnhem Land in Northern Territory just to really soak themselves into the community and just serve the best way that they knew how. And so I definitely had this mission mentality of we have this responsibility with the gifts and talents that we have and the resources that we have. And so when I heard about Open Doors, I was like, oh my goodness, I have to be involved. I spoke to someone who said that there was a job happening in the marketing team, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is where I can do more than just donating money, which is of course so incredibly helpful, but donating my time and actually being able to work there as well and make a living at the same time, I thought was pretty amazing. And so, one thing led to another quite quickly, and that's kind of how I kind of knew it was a God thing was how almost seamless it happened. I just once I made that decision, everything happened, and all of a sudden it was my first day. So it was pretty crazy, but I haven't looked back since. It's been such an incredible journey since then.
Well, it's a wonderful organisation, and I've had the privilege of being connected with a number of people at Open Doors over the years. But for those who don't know about Open Doors, tell us a bit of the history. Many people may have heard of Brother Andrew, who wrote the book God's Smuggler. He used to smuggle Bibles into China in a VW Beetle, I think it was. Tell us a bit of the history. Yep.
Yeah. So Open Doors has been around since 1955, and it's this beautiful journey of strengthening the persecuted church in countries all over the world. So countries like the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Latin America, all these countries where it's either illegal to be a Christian or it's a different religion majority. So like a Muslim majority, Hindu majority. Countries where it's so hard to be a Christian, we are there to spread the gospel and spread strength and resilience in these countries that are facing violence or psychological violence or anything like that makes it even harder to be a Christian. And so the way that we kind of put it in one line is that we help people follow Jesus all over the world, no matter the cost. And that's kind of a poetic way of putting it is just that in these countries, these are the most courageous Christians. You just have to listen to one story on our blog, and you'll be blown away by the courageous, almost fearless way of following Jesus, knowing that He is the medicine of the world and He must be shared. And so it's an amazing ministry to be part of, but the support of persecuted Christians can look many different forms. So it's like emergency relief, of course, when, people are fleeing war or someone's just, like in Sri Lanka when the Sri Lanka church bombings happened, Open Doors is on the ground helping the local church survive and the community survive. It can also be discipleship. So that's, of course, goes back to Brother Andrew and, delivering Bibles and Christian resources and children's books and that kind of Christian literature. And of course, the last kind of, the third sphere is community development. So that can be things like job training and trauma counselling and that kind of holistic approach to help the community develop and continue to grow after persecution or in the face of it.
Mm. And, I just, remember one of my most impactful interviews I did years ago was with a lady named Helen Bahane from Eritrea.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. She was locked up in a shipping container, imprisoned for, she was a gospel singer and she'd been sharing her faith. And I remember her just telling me the horrific persecution she suffered. And she shared how Open Doors had helped her and supported her and encouraged her after being released. And also, she said, I was able to share the gospel without any freedom while being persecuted. And he said, how much more should Christians in the West share the gospel and they have freedom? And it really challenged me to think, oh my goodness, we've got to really step it up in the West. We really learn a lot from Christians who are persecuted when we hear these stories. Tell us, what are some of the things you've learned? I mean, for us Christians in the West, we don't really get persecution. We're doing it pretty good. But what lessons can we learn from our persecuted brothers and sisters?
Oh, there's so many lessons, and Helen Bahane, she is one of my absolute favourites in terms of the stories that she tells. It's incredible, and she's actually the one that said that Jesus Christ is the medicine of the world, and he must be shared, and that's a quote that has just stuck with me forever. And she's a phenomenal woman, and one of the things that we had a team meeting with her a couple of months ago in the face of lockdown and everything, and it was so encouraging to hear from her. And one of the things that she said that was so amazing was she actually, because she lives, I can't remember exactly where she lives at the moment, but it's a Western country, and she said that it's actually harder to be a Christian where she is in the West than it was in Eritrea where she was living. And I was shocked by that, but also it was such a rebuke because I'm like, it's harder because she was talking about how in terms of sharing the gospel, it's harder because in Eritrea, it's like it's the lifeblood. It's like you must share it. But she was talking about like in Sunday schools or in like primary schools or whatever, there's restrictions on you don't want to offend anyone or you don't want to say the wrong thing or whatever. But in these countries like Eritrea, it's like, no, this is the hope for humanity. Like there's almost this urgency of people who follow Jesus. It's like, no, we must, because this is the only way that we will survive is if we like us as a humanity. And I guess in the West, there's less urgency. So that's kind of course, in a war-torn town or country or where you're, being persecuted and thrown into jail. Of course, that's more of an immediate danger of it's harder to share the gospel. But in terms of, I guess the response of Christians in Western countries, there's less of an urgency. So I think that's something that I've learned so much. Or think about like North Korea, for example, like Bibles. There's no way that you could ever have a Bible in your house if you would have to bury it or hide it in the walls or anything, because if you were ever caught even just with a Bible in your house, you would be thrown into a labor camp or you would be killed on the spot. It's just so incredibly dangerous. And it makes me think, it's like, how lucky are we to just have a Bible on our phone or a Bible on our bookshelf? We probably don't even know that, how many Bibles are on our bookshelf or whatever. And just being able to pick it up, like we have such freedom to just pick up a Bible and just, or Google a passage or whatever. And it's like, there's so much more urgency from these countries and these persecuted Christians. And I think that courageous Christianity makes it even more passionate. And so I think there's a lot to learn about how we evangelize from persecuted Christians.
And if people want to get involved with Open Doors, I guess they can search you up on social media and go to the website and everything.
Absolutely.
But how can people partner with you?
Yeah, so on our website at the moment we have we have a monthly giving program, which is, I think monthly giving is an interesting one because it is a way that you can really invest in Open Doors and the work that we're doing, because monthly giving is something where, we can expect the money and we can actually use it in the most efficient way, and where it's emergency relief. It's getting the money sent where it's most needed in that, because within a split second the need can shift. If there's an emergency, if there's a bombing in a country, or if there's a village has been the husbands have been killed or something like that. We're on the ball, ready to respond whenever we can. But we've also got appeals that happen as well, which is projects that we can really support. So, for example, in Nigeria at the moment, we have an appeal where we can support women who have lost husbands. So therefore, they've lost the breadwinners in their family. So we can provide shelter and food for Nigerian widows, but also provide trauma counselling, which I think is a really important thing to support, because that is going to, while food and shelter will help them in the immediate, the trauma counselling will help them long-term heal from the trauma that they've experienced. So you can actually go to opendoors.org.au/women to learn more about that particular project.
Awesome. Well, it is so good to hear the incredible work of Open Doors and encourage people to connect with them any way they can. And, it's been such a blessing to hear a bit of your story and your heart for the ministry. I reckon you're a history maker, Kimberly. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to hear this conversation again, listen online anytime at historymakersradio.com. There you'll also find links to all of our social media channels, and you can subscribe to our iTunes podcast. History Makers is a faith-based ministry, and we want to thank everyone for their generous support. If you've got a suggestion of anyone we should interview, send us an email, info@historymakersradio.com. God bless. I'm Matt Prater, and my challenge to you now is to go and make history.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.